I take a sip of water.
Yeah, no, that's good. You got to stay hydrated. What do you? Is it water?
It's like water with a lot of stuff in it.
Ah, okay, all right. I was gonna say. I was like, all right. I mean, maybe it's on a new type of
The
water
water
then.
in New York has not been as good as it was. It's
I
got like tinctures and stuff, you know.
Yeah, no, it looks clean. It looks good. A lot of people don't understand it needs to have some color to it. That's what the really healthy water is.
Yeah, you know,
Mhm.
nutrients, minerals.
I know in New York
Yes.
it's Poland Spring, right? That's the big water bottle thing.
Poland Spring in
Yeah.
New York.
That's what I saw all over the place. I don't know. I'm not a native,
Oh,
so
like
I
when you're walking, you go into a deli.
right.
What's the water that you see?
Mhm.
Poland Spring is probably, yeah, that's the most popular. But yeah, what is it where you are?
It's like Arrowhead or Crystal Geyser
Mm-hmm.
or yeah. There's
Yeah. It's funny. It's like what's in the landscape of your corner store.
right. It depends. It's all
Weird.
circumstantial to where you are geographically.
Yeah. We have a Polish landscape here in New York.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to water when you're buying a water bottle?
I gotta admit that I'm a real sucker for Evian water. It
Ooh,
tastes good. It's got all the minerals in it. Just tastes good.
it's fancy, is what it
It is
is.
fancy, but it tastes really good. I've also had moments in my life where I had access to water that tasted like that was free, and I was obsessed with it. So I know that it's not just like, oh, this one costs $4 and I'm going to treat myself. It's like there I used to work for a farm in upstate New York, and every I would work the stands here in the city, and every week they would come in and they would bring a giant jug of water, and I would just bring glass, like just all my thermoses, and fill them up so that I would have it all week.
Right.
And they just got used to it. They would bring extra just for me because they knew how much I loved it.
It's
And that
very
was
nice
just
of them.
from like they had I think it was a well on the farm, and it was just, water from nearby. A lot of minerals.
Good. That's good. You got to have that. Yeah, Evian is good. It seems like Smart Water had a phase in terms of popularity for a bit, and then I feel like that's kind of tapered off with all these new water bottle brands.
Yeah, there's a lot. I did a water tasting once with a friend of mine who had just decided to be sober, and it was just like one of the things that we did early on was just like, okay, we're going to try every single water and develop a taste, develop a palate, and it's a
That
real thing.
that's great. I would love to partake in that. I think that, but I don't know. I don't want to be like, oh, this is, you know, even Evian. I'd be like, oh, this is just not up to my par anymore. I feel like I want to have like a good, like whatever's there is good, because some people, and I've talked to some people like this, they just will not drink a certain type of water bottle. I say, well, it's water,
Yeah.
but it's all
Yeah,
circumstantial, as you know.
it is.
Yeah.
You got to go with the flow.
Hmm. And you got to drink that water, whether it's Evian
Got to
or
stay hydrated. No, I've been drinking a lot of tap water these days, and
ooh.
it's supposed to be good in New York. It doesn't taste great always, honestly, but it's some of the best tap water you can get, apparently. I've been told that my entire life anyway. I've been singing that tune, so I'll just keep singing it and just
Good.
stay
Yeah.
hydrated.
Yeah. Perpetuate it. Sure. Mm. That
Yeah.
one, and then Flint's a close second, of course, as we all know.
Yeah,
That's
yes. No. Um yeah. I'm sure we could all be doing a lot better, but we do our best
sure.
in 2022.
Yeah. Have you written it down yet? Have you written the year down and then screwed up the initial one? Like, oh, it's not 2021 anymore. It's 2022.
Oh yeah, but I always have trouble with that. Like occasionally it'll just spit out like a 1998, and I'm like, where did that come from? I'm still in grade school. It's occasionally like my brain just spits out some really funny ones, and that
That is, I mean, that's 24 years ago. That's a good chunk of time.
I think it happens because I actually thought about it. I was like, when I was in grade school and high school, I had to write the date on every single thing that I did. I went to
Sure.
a strict school and like I had to have the formatting correct. And so I got so in the habit of writing the date during that time in my life. And then I kind of didn't ever have to do that ever again. So who knows why we were so strict about that. But I think, yeah, when I have to date something, I just go back to like that time in my life when I had to date every single piece of paper that I wrote on. Yeah.
98, good year. Good year for that,
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
say.
I was in eighth grade, I think.
Oh, okay. Pivotal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean
Yeah.
it is. It truly is. Now at that time, this is a great leeway into the music stuff. Were you interested in playing music, or were you playing music at the time?
Yeah, I had a rock band with my friends and we played in, you know, our living rooms when our parents would let us. And I also really wanted to go to a school with a jazz program because I was interested in studying jazz, and I ended up doing private lessons for a little while, and on the studying the bass guitar because I wanted to play bass in my friend's band. And then because we didn't really have, I went to a pretty like math and science school, and so we didn't really have a good music program, but we did have a choir, and I did sing in it, um, and that kind of helped me kind of fulfill that within my school. Um, but I was always kind of frustrated. I wanted to be at an art school. I wanted to be studying jazz and being in all the musicals and doing all the extracurriculars. But I was at a different kind of school, so I just did what I could with it. And being in the choir was great. I mean, I learned a lot about harmony, and I love singing. So you know,
That's
it was
good.
cool.
You got to
Yeah.
use what is available. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was this in New York, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, interestingly, I think I'm thinking about all this stuff too because I just went to there's a series that's kind of all over, but it's the Ambient Church series. I know it's in Los Angeles sometimes. It started here in New York, I believe. And there was one at the Church of the Heavenly Rest on the Upper East Side. And that's a church where I used to sing in this choir in high school. And it was really wild to be back inside that space again and to be hearing Suzanne Ciani was playing this incredible modular composition. Um, and to be there amongst people that I really relate to musically now. I felt like I was really amongst my people in a lot of ways. And it was wild to have that same space where I was like this little like Catholic school girl, like just wanting to be in bands, to kind of be there, to have both of us exist there simultaneously a little bit was really cool.
Yeah. You're Bob Dylan in that sense, bringing it all back home. So,
Come on back. Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. But your parents were musicians as well, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, they still are. My dad still is a gigging musician at 74.
Ooh, all right. That's
Hmm.
awesome. That's so cool that he's like still it's still within him. He's like I like for the love of music. I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it for sure. I bet. I mean, at that
Hmm.
age, that
Yeah,
it's still so in him.
yeah, definitely. He's a lifer. It's the love of music and also the need to feel like you've got a job and you've got a place to be. And I think that's also important for him and probably a lot of people his age, to just have a place where you're needed and um, to have a job to do.
Yeah, it's true. To have drive is very important in any facet of life, whatever age you are, whether
Hmm.
it be in 1998 or 2022. It's all it's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, were they exposing you to a lot of music when you were a kid? I'm assuming. I mean, with them being so immersed within music.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this last night who grew up in a musical family as well. And I was like, so how was it playing music, growing up in a musical family? And he had a very similar kind of relationship to it that I do, which is like, it's actually you'd think it was like the most supportive household, but it can actually be very hard because your parents have certain ideas about music and what it is, um, what it means to be a musician, and and then you grow up and kind of start developing your own ideas about what that is. Sometimes in opposition to what they are, maybe simply because you're a moody teenager or just because you're your own person. But um, I was introduced to a lot of music that continues to resonate with me and be and really important. Um, a lot of jazz, a lot of the American songbook, definitely like a lot of classical, a smattering of classical things. Like we had the Planets CD was like always on rotation. And then a lot of Cole Porter, that kind of family of jazz, and um, the Beatles, obviously, but like very heavily on rotation. And then, you know, also things of the time like um, Gloria Estefan was also on heavy rotation. James Taylor, um, I don't know, a
A
lot of
wide
stuff.
assortment, it seems like. Yeah.
Definitely a lot of stuff. They were not though like I have a lot of friends who listen to Steely Dan nostalgically because their dads were into Steely Dan, and that was not my dad. Um, I they didn't listen to any rock music. Like I also have friends who grew up on like classic rock, and I'm a little jealous of that. They were way more into jazz and a different kind of popular music, but and uh, and then in terms of what we were exposed to with live music, when I was playing in my family band, we were going to folk festivals, and I was exposed to a lot of American traditional music and old time music and kind of like banjo fiddle sort of stuff, and then a traditional Appalachian song and storytelling, and then just like folk music in the more kind of Pete Seeger tradition of like political songs and yeah, folk music for um, kind of like messages for the things that you want to say, that kind of just songwriting.
Right, right.
And I think that's what I grew up thinking, that that's what a songwriter was, is like Joan Baez, like that's what a songwriter is. Um, and and yeah, I think I've since like been exposed to a lot of other things. I like went to art school, and um, I think that's where I started to branch off a little bit more from my family. But yeah, definitely a lot of music. And we hosted house concerts for many, many years, with mostly folk musicians that were coming through because they needed a place to play in New York. And we would put them up, and they'd play. And um, that was people who were kind of on the house concert circuit of a certain folk musician um, community that we were a part of. And I can rattle off some names, but the one name you might be familiar with is like Sam Amadon. I met as a young kid. We were both at this festival and a few different festivals, and we would see each other. And he's someone that I continue to see and be friends with, and I adore him and his music. So I feel lucky that like there are some people that I met as a young person where I really watched them come from a similar background, but then continue to change, like shape shift as they got older, and inform themselves by the music and the background that they came from, but really shift it in a lot of interesting ways. So yeah.
Yeah, that must be so interesting. Like I saw you when I was very, very young, and now we're both here at the same time. And I'm, you're still the same person as
Yeah.
well as the other people are. And it's just like just the
Yeah.
progression of things. That must be wild.
It is. Yeah. And then of course, yeah, my siblings too. I've watched them grow and change. Yeah, and a lot of people from that scene. Um, but yeah, I think there weren't really, no, anyway, I don't know how much we want to talk about that, but that's part of the story.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's an integral part. It seems like very, very important.
Mhm.
Are you the only one of your siblings to pursue music?
No, my brother and sister are both musicians, and
And
um,
there's only three of you, I'm assuming.
yeah, there's
Okay.
only three of us, and our
Only
cat.
like it's a little bit of I mean, it's three people. Yeah,
Three people. It's a lot.
it's a good amount. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot, especially in like a, for a while we lived in a very small apartment. And yeah, my they're both really talented musicians and songwriters. Stephanie and Reed Jenkins, and they do a lot of other things too. My brother is a violinist, and also his side gig is he marries people. So like you can get a full package deal where he'll both officiate your wedding, but then also play violin at it um, for an extra price.
At the
And
same
then
time, I mean that'd be impressive.
yeah, no,
That'd
I'm
be really
sure. I
cool.
don't know how much they merge in his. I've actually never gone to one of his like weddings that he's officiated, but he's often at City Hall marrying people. Um,
Very cool.
and my sister is also a doc filmmaker, so she's a musician known for her banjo playing is like one of the things that she does a lot. And then a doc filmmaker.
Wow. I mean, you guys are very, very creative bunch of people there.
Yeah, it's like if you weren't, you'd be the black sheep in the family for sure. I remember once like I dated someone who was not a musician and my parents like did not get it. It felt like the like twist on when someone brings home the person covered in tattoos and drives a motorcycle and they're like, oh my God, our daughter's gotten into the wrong crowd. I like brought home someone who worked in finance and they were like, oh no.
So you sit at a desk all day? That's all you do? That's
Yeah. And they were like, oh God, she's we're worried.
yeah. It's
Um
a troublesome group of people there. Those financiers.
but that all being said, just that my parents were both like the black sheep in their families, being musicians. They like left their small towns to come to New York, and they raised a bunch of little sheep just like them.
That's great. That is really fantastic that everybody has creative. I mean, and they took to it. Everyone took to it. Like it's yeah, the music is a part
Yeah.
of not only your life, but also just the whole families. It runs through you all, which is great.
Yeah, I think my parents always discouraged me from getting into music as a profession because they didn't want to see me like go through the torturous process of merging the thing that you love and the thing that sustains you. But I've tried so many times not to, and it just keeps like I just keep going back, and so it like at a certain point I have to be like, I think this is what I'm doing. um and I think my parents are just slowly sort of accepting it.
That's great. I mean, at least they're coming around to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not finance, which is also a plus.
It's very much the opposite of finance. I love if it had like a little bit more to do with finance. That would be great.
A little bit
Right
more
now.
emphasis would be good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm doing great. It's all good.
Yeah, I've heard I mean, you made your what you made 15 mil this last month, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. And I publicize it far and wide too. So
Yeah, no, I
I'm
heard
glad you're
about
paying attention.
Pitchfork wrote a whole thing about it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
caught it on there actually. I was like, wow.
I just
But
send them my salary, my like credit card statements at the end of every month. That's
right,
like just a thing that it's just in the habit of doing it.
you got to put it out there. You got to yeah, you can make it well known. You if you weren't so immersed in music from a young age, do you think that you would have eventually found your your liking towards it without being exposed to it through your family?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Um, it's really, I mean, it's a hard question to answer. Um, it's really a really hard question to answer. You always meet those people who are like, oh, well, my great 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 grandfather was a clarinetist, and like everyone in my family says that I have his likeness and they're a clarinet player. You hear stories like that, and I'm always pretty fascinated by it. Like the idea that you could be kind of like an isolated, like somehow genetic expression of something like that, as opposed to me, where it's just completely enmeshed with my parents were in a band while I was in the womb, like playing gigs. So it's really hard to separate that. And I I don't know. I think I'm also a very visual person, and I've always made visual work. And um, the two practices, I think, have a lot to do with one another. And I kind of volley back and forth between the two a lot of the time. Um, I might get like a little fried on one thing and I need to go back to the other. And so I think if I weren't doing music, I'd be doing some kind of creative work. And I'm like a classic like ADHD case too, where I feel like I'm just always going to be doing a lot of different things, and they're always going to be like a little bit different from how a lot of um, like maybe traditional paths look, and definitely something related to the arts. Um, so yeah,
So I mean, it's in you to be creative, but whether that be music, if you weren't exposed to it, is a
yeah.
toss up.
I mean, it also, not to get too, I just I feel like we'd all be doing music if we lived our lives differently. I think we would all be musicians. I think we should all be musicians. I think we'd all feel a lot better in our bodies if we were all like able to play music together, in like a, more in a different sense than like would we all be playing in bands and playing at festivals and all of that, it's more like I really feel like we should all be in touch with a certain side of music that I actually don't feel in touch with a lot of the time. I feel like a lot of the time I'm playing songs and stuff, but I feel like just that more human need for connection, that music, that aspect of music. I'm
Right.
getting a weird junk call. Sorry.
No, no, it's good.
Um,
You can answer it now. It's good. I love to get these calls on the air.
yeah,
I feel like with your music, there's more of like a softer tone to it. It's not very, just very in your face. It's more, laid back. And I just want to know, where did your emphasis with that kind of like softer sound come from? Was that something that you did knowingly, or were you like that this is just the music that I like?
I think the way that I express myself just comes pretty naturally. It just, I tend to be, I tend to love like a halftime like halftime drum beat. Like I feel like I just like live at that tempo, and that in that mode, just kind of slowly. And I feel like I'm definitely with the record that I just put out. I was definitely making some aspects of it are like the music that I want to hear. So, and the music I want to be around, a lot of the time. And that tends to be more open, more ambient, like a little bit on the softer side. Um, and even though I listen to a lot of other stuff that I find really inspiring, I think my expression tends to be more subtle, and in general too, like I'm not a super demonstrative person. I think I tend to have pretty subtle expressions in general, um, and I think my music is no different. I'm definitely exploring like emotion, and I'm exploring storytelling, and that's where it just sits naturally for me. But that'll change. I mean, I'm going to put out a song pretty soon that's maybe a little louder, a little different, a little like more cutting than some of the stuff I put out this year. So I'm curious how that'll hit you and if that feels like a different person or something. I mean, I also think it just depends on who I'm playing with and who I'm hanging out with at the time. And records to me are very much just records of a time and place. And those will sound very different depending on what I have access to, um and who I'm playing with. So, and I don't get to make records very often, partly as just, do I have the resources to do that? And when I do, or when I decide like I can pull enough together, like I make it with what's around me. So I feel like I'm a pretty collaborative person, and it's going to change a lot depending on who's around. So
Right. It always depends on the on who. Yeah, I mean, who you hang around with is really a good indication of like where. where your interests lie and whatnot, even at the time, or just who you are as a person.
Mm, yeah.
Definitely. And I mean, the album that you were referring to before, your latest album, it was an overview of I'm so glad I'm fucking it up right now. A Phenomenal Nature, correct? Is that true?
Yeah, it's called An Overview on Phenomenal Nature.
On, not of.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
Well,
like one of those things. I was like, is it of or on? I don't know. I went with on, just sounds like it to me, that rolls off the tongue, even though it's like a really long title. But
no, it sounds
yeah.
good. Yeah. What exactly does that mean to you?
Mm.
This is when we get into the existential kind of really questions of the. It's around this time of the podcast is when
Okay,
those
great.
come about.
Yeah, everyone put your existential caps on.
Yeah.
Join us.
Yeah. We're on a
Well,
journey.
to transition into that space first, I'll mention there's kind of a very literal interpretation of it, which is I pulled that from I love pulling album titles from like one very specific song title in a record, um, and having that sort of shed light on everything else. And that one emerged like once the whole record was done, and I had the line from the song Hard Drive, which is I meet a security guard at this exhibit in New York, and the exhibit is called Phenomenal Nature. And she kind of pulled me aside and said, I want to give you an overview on the exhibit. So it's very literal. It's just like I'm quoting something someone said, which is, she ended up giving me this overview of the exhibit and through her lens. And then I just loved the idea that my record was just kind of quoting this one woman that I met very briefly, that I'll never see again, and that can be that very small brushstroke can just be an entire album. And that's kind of what my album is. It's like a lot of me just quoting people and kind of putting the pieces together. Um,
That's great that you like honed in on this one very specific thing that somebody said, like, and like you said, is very it was not a huge thing. It was a very very small amount of time that you were spending with this
yeah,
one person. That's great. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of creativity is driven from that. I mean, it as you
yeah.
said before, but I feel like if you really look at what other people are saying often, um that's not really where you're going to get inspiration from, but what they say, slightly or offhand.
Yeah, and to me, I really like the idea that the title sounds very like it kind of has this sort of faux academic sound to it of like grandiosity, but it's actually just this one woman talking to me about her thoughts about this one thing. And I like I like that contrast. It's a little bit of a wink, I guess, but it's like I also really like that. I just am obsessed with people that um they might approach you and say something like I'd love to tell you about this thing, as if it's an objective truth, but then you get this completely subjective view of the world through their eyes, which you may agree with or not, but either way it's very interesting to me. And I just kind of fall in love with people like that. And in this case, like I really liked a lot of what she had to say, and who knows why she pulled me. And a couple of my friends were there with me. And I put out, actually a few months ago in November, I put out a version of Hard Drive that's just the entire uh, sort of monologue, soliloquy, I don't know, of her talking to me. And it's not even the whole thing. It's just when I decided to start recording. Um, and you can hear her just tell me her ideas um, about art and about the museum and then about feminism and about our president at the time. I hate saying his name. Um, and uh, it's it's very representative of my process for that record and how I wrote it. There's like a lot of kind of audio bites of these strangers and putting the pieces together like a tarot deck and kind of like pulling meaning from that. And And then also I wrote a lot about landscape and sort of these strange phenomenons I was encountering, and genuinely having a sense of awe in the face of natural beauty and being very sincere about that. So it's not completely like a it's like sarcastic. It's also very genuine. And I also like that. I like being vulnerable enough to be like genuinely awe of like a landscape, and to be challenged to write about it, as well as someone like Mary Oliver or someone like that. You know, where yeah, we've all written about these things a million times over, but I'm gonna try to do it too.
in a new
Um,
way. Sure,
yeah, and I love the
bring some
word
new light to
phenomenal
it.
too. Phenomenal is such a good word, and it's the idea that it could be a phenomenon, something like absolutely peculiar and unique and just extraordinary. Um, so yeah, I feel like I'm
Fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic, exactly too. But real. The thing about fantastic is that it's about the, you know, fantasy is the root of that word, but phenomenon is like a real thing. It's a thing that you can explain. It's a thing that you can actually, it's in the encyclopedia, but it's still like extraordinary. I don't know. I I think I oscillate between being like pretty calm and then just being like really blown away by stuff. and and trying to capture that in song is really hard because it always falls a little bit flat, like taking a picture of a sunset. And so yeah, I think I kind of wrote about that frustration in this record too, of just being like, everything's so crazy. How the hell do you write about it? Like just being like, I'm just a lowly human and I can't figure it out. So it just like makes me laugh at the end of the day, you know?
Sure. Going back to that one interaction with the security guard at the museum, did and you mentioned that you had some friends with you at that time when you guys were kind of uh, being shown the museum through
Mhm.
by the security guard. Did that interaction stand out to your friends as well? And were they surprised when you kind of used that that term to title the album?
I mean, um I still see them pretty regularly. One of them I kind of lost touch with. She had moved out to LA and I just didn't see her for a while. Just sent it to her and she was like, "Whoa, this is like, oh, you like a whole world just came out of that one moment and I haven't seen you since then." Kind of crazy.
That's a wild feel for both of you. I'm assuming like both like the person who was there and you who created and curated this whole album. I mean, that must be a really interesting feeling.
Yeah, I mean it's scary too because you can hear her voice in that second release that I did of it, and I had that moment of like, oh my god, what if she's mad that she's in it? I forgot to tell her. I should actually be signing release forms and all that. My friend
Sure.
Wyndham is in the recording as well, and we continue to collaborate on a lot of stuff. He shot one of my music videos and shot a lot of my photos that are out there on the internet, um, and he's just been a wonderful, like very supportive and proud friend all along, and he's just been on the ride from day one, and yeah, but I remember in that moment we walked away from that woman just being like, all right, wow, that was a lot more than we had bargained for, huh? It's just one of those, you might meet these strangers and you're kind of having to judge in that moment, how much you want to stay in that conversation. It's like, what is their intention? Why are they trying to grab your attention? What is it worth to them? And what do they want from me? You're going through all of those cautious thing. As a New Yorker, maybe not everyone is like as skeptical, but it is sadly a question that we often ask, and I try to shut down that part of myself as much as I can, and really water the parts of myself that are curious and open to what people have to say. And I think when you can get into that mindset, you're either going to spend a lot of time with someone who's going to suck up a lot of your energy, or you're going to spend time with someone who will give you something really beautiful at the end of that conversation. And that's all that it has to be, is like a conversation that then dissipates and you move on. And that those are the most beautiful moments. And this was one of them where we were all, you can feel with your friends too, you know each other's body language. You're kind of feeling like, should I like nudge my friend and be like, hey, we have to make it to the next gallery now? You're always trying to suss that out. But I think we all had this very curious mindset, and we could feel that this person had something really beautiful to say, and she was really captivating. um and that was all it was, and so I have interactions like that all the time. And I think sometimes my friends get tired of it. They're like, oh, there she goes again, like talking to a stranger, like engaging them too much, like all of that. And it can be annoying sometimes. But I love just like riffing with people and getting just bouncing off of each other. And it's just one of the great things about living and being in New York. And it's just like having fleeting conversations with strangers that you'll never see again. It's like, for me, it's a great joy. I think it's not that way for everyone. I have friends with severe social anxiety who kind of like hate those kinds of interactions, and um, I think I don't know, I did get a lot of energy from it. I got a lot of energy from it through the pandemic when I couldn't really see people, but I'd like just talk to strangers in the park, sort of. I don't know. You can ask yourself how much I'm the punisher in the situation, and I don't have an answer for you.
Going back to your soft sounding music, do you feel that people are paying more attention to the lyrics, that are do you feel like the lyrics are cutting through
Yeah,
the music at some points, and they're kind of focusing on what you're saying more than the actual instrumentation?
I think so. And I don't think that's because of the like volume or the necessarily. I think the music is built around the lyrics because that's what the lyrics came first. And I worked with Josh Kaufman, who's um, works with a lot of songwriters who are really amazing lyricists. Like Craig Finn is one of them, and I've worked with him and Craig a lot. And then I was just coming off of um, just the tales of learning a lot of David Berman's music and thinking a lot about him, and um, just being really interested in lyrics in a way that I hadn't really been before. Um, and so that was just all I was thinking about, and that was all I really cared about. And then the music was sort of secondary. And so I think just the nature of the process you know, built the form, and the music around it just maybe formed because of that in that way. But I think it could have been like, it could be like, I'm thinking about maybe more aggressive music where the lyrics are still centerpieces in the songs. And I think it can be incredibly loud or grating and still be lyric focused. But in my case, um, lyrics were definitely the emphasis. And I think it just, yeah, if anything, I think one way in which the music formed around it is that the songs are very simple. They're like two chords a lot of the time. And um, to me, that just means that the the chords matter much less. They're there to dress the lyrics, to give them a stage, which also means that the music changes a lot. Like I've played with now like 5 different bands already, and I've only been able to tour in between like COVID spikes. So I haven't even been playing that much, and the songs have changed so much, so many times. And that's because I'm like, hey guys, this is 2 chords, like let's play them. And depending on who I'm playing it with, what instrumentation I'm with, it could sound like anything, but the lyrics are always going to be the same, and they're always going to be at the center. So um in that way, like one of my songs now I'm playing, it sounds more like a Velvet Underground song, but it's very soft and sweet on the record. And um it just it's very flexible, but the lyrics are always there.
That's
Um,
the through line.
yeah, that's the through line. It's very much not about how it sounds, about a lick, about an instrumentation, about a like synth setting. It's like it'd be really fun to make a record like that where it really is about the sound and the sonics of it. And that's not this record.
Which is good. Which is, I
Yeah.
mean, it's good that it's not you're not, I mean, pigeonholed in this sense to be like, this is, the lyrics are here, but it also has to really really match exactly what I did on the music end
Yeah,
of it, the actual instrumentation of it.
not at all. And I think that was coming from a place of like I was playing in a bunch of bands at a certain point, and I remember going to my grandmother's house, and my family was like, "Play us a song, like something that you play in one of your bands," and I was like, "I can't because I don't have like the synth thing, the blah blah blah," and then like I felt very like, "Oh shit, like I've got nothing to show for everything that I do," because it's also so tied to like how it's played and how the equipment. And of course I love a lot of music like that, so I'm not like discarding it, but I'm saying I had the need to be able to say like I want to play a song for my grandmother, and I need it to just be able to present it even if I had no instruments, just to be able to sing it a cappella. Like I need it to stand up to that challenge, the grandma challenge.
How do you deal with a writer's block or struggling with piecing a song together?
I don't have any clear guides. I do have some. I I don't I write in like either very slowly or in these like crazy spurts a lot of the time. Like the record that we've been talking about, I had all the lyrics kind of like in scraps in many, many, many different places. And I kind of just pulled them onto a Google Doc and then showed up at the studio. And then we made it in a week. And that was like, I've never done anything like that before. But one thing that that experience taught me, and that a lot of experiences teach me over and over again, is that I have all of the tools that I need. And so much of writer's block to me comes from thinking that it's outside of me, that it's, if only I were this poet, I might be able to think of the next line of this song, or if only I had read that book in college, like I'd be smart enough to achieve this idea. But it always comes back to the idea of being an expert of your own experience, being an expert. Like I'm the only one that can be an expert at that too, which is also very like I think I gain a lot of confidence from that, which is um I know this really well and I can continue to know it really well. And to challenge myself to have experiences that like push me to know myself better. And um I think the only like writer's block tool that I know will always help me is to remember in whatever way I need to in that moment, that to recognize like you're trying to be something that you're not, or you're trying to like supplement. It's like call a friend. I feel like the call a friend um impulse is in me all the time, and the friend might be just some better version of myself that is smarter, quicker witted, like more emotionally developed, like not the version of me that I am today writing this song. And always there's a lot of information in that space of recognizing when I'm comparing myself to this other like ghost version, and and just kind of recognizing when I'm feeling that and when I can let go of it and realize that there's just an endless amount of things to play with that I already know. And I think about that too with being an instrumentalist. Like I'm really not a good guitar player, but um, I can write my own guitar parts and they can be beautiful and interesting. Um, I don't have to always call my friend who's a total shredder to achieve something beautiful. And though that is very fun. So yeah, my writer's block thing is always to just remember that I have all the tools inside of me, and that's hard to remember a lot of the time because we're always, we're sponges for a lot of things outside of ourselves. Um, yeah, and also just to um to really find stillness, because especially as someone with a very short attention span, I get called into things and I get very excited, like I'm being social or being on my phone, whatever it is. Like I get a lot of serotonin and like any kind of chemical just
Dopamine, yeah.
yeah, dopamine is one of them. All the good feeling chemicals. Like we get rushes whenever we get a text from the person we have a crush on, and or like someone likes our photo of our face, or whatever gives us that rush, or if it's like watching
Game
Adventure
of
Time,
Thrones.
something like, yeah, Game of Thrones is definitely like a lot of chemicals are rushing, a lot of chemicals rushing in that show, a lot of fluids, but you know, it's it's really important to remember that when you're writing a song, it probably won't deliver that same rush. And for me, I feel like I'm always looking for that rush. And if I'm writing something and I don't get it, I will discard it immediately. And I'm throwing out a lot of things that might have just been too young to have given me any kind of like very strong feeling. And yeah, I think it's really important to remember how much like candy we're getting all day, and we might just need to eat a piece of fruit.
Level out, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Are you
I'm
with
with you.
me?
I'm with you. I was with you before you even asked if I was with you. I'm along for the ride.
Okay.
Do you feel like there's a connection between you and the audience when you're playing a show, especially in like a more intimate space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even in less intimate spaces, I was really amazed. I was just on tour with Courtney Barnett and I was opening the show, and those were big shows. Those are bigger shows than I've ever played before. You know, sometimes thousands of people.
Sure.
And I was amazed at how much connection I felt with a room that large. When it was just me, I was opening solo, which I hadn't ever done before. And how much I could really connect with a room full of people. I love it. It's definitely, speaking of like a rush, like it's so fun to be out there, like talking with people in real time, and getting to know the personality of a group of people. And then of course it's comprised of all these individuals who might be talking to you the whole time. And I really enjoy that. Of course it can be sour sometimes, but all the audiences at Courtney's shows were amazing. And I'm finding in general, like the audiences that I'm playing to are incredibly gracious, um, and also just very happy to be there, partly because of this moment in time. I think we're all just kind of like, wow, we're lucky to be here in this room together. Um, so I find, yeah, but then intimate spaces for sure too. Of course, in a smaller room, like you can you can really get there. But I'm amazed at how much you can get there in a big room too.
Sure. Do you feel that the audience understands exactly what you're talking about when you're singing when you're singing your songs?
No, I think I think they don't. I think that's fine. I think everyone's going to get whatever they want in that moment, and they're going to arrive at that moment as they are and bring what they bring to the table, and um, get something from it, hopefully, um, even if it's that they don't like it and that they can go home and write something better. You know, I really I think about this a lot. Like when you go to a wedding and everyone's crying, they're not just crying because the two people are in love and they're happy for them. They're crying because they're not married, or they're crying because they love their partner so much that they remember that in that moment. They're crying because, you know, um, they just got a divorce. They're everyone's crying for different reasons, but it's a great excuse to cry. Um, it's a great place to let some of those tears out publicly with other people. I think the same thing about a concert. Like you're reacting to things for all different reasons. You're looking for songs to lift you up, to make you cry, like to get you out of your head and in your body. Like there's all kinds of reasons why people go to shows. And I think it's interesting when I'm opening for someone, a lot of people don't know who I am, and I'm just having to kind of show them my very wordy songs with an acoustic guitar, which is a challenge. But I think people get on board a lot of the time. Like I found people, especially I love hearing people respond to my song Hard Drive, because that's the song that people who know my music, that was probably the song that introduced them to my music, and they have their own associations with it, oftentimes like a very specific moment in time, like during the pandemic, during the inauguration, like all of that. um, but I love hearing people react to it in real time, because it's just kind of like a classic, like to me, and in a lot of ways it's like just a play on words, and like a folk song. And I like when people are listening to the lyrics and they hear me like make a joke essentially, and it's kind of just like, this is it's like a cheap trick in a way. And I like when I can connect with someone on that, and we can just sort of be there together.
Yeah, that is really great. So I mean, you're not writing songs with the intention of it being open-ended, open to interpretation, but it lends itself to whatever that person's going through at that moment, as well as being
Yeah.
specific in other parts. Like you understand that this is in reference to this.
Yeah, it's just a given that it's open to interpretation. Um, but I like art that doesn't bang you over the head with what it's trying to say. I like I try to also find a tone that allows for that discovery, or um, but there's also, it's like sometimes you're just creating a space for people to occupy for a while, and that's really valid. And I mean, just great examples of that are like the Cocteau Twins. The lyrics are not rendered to tell you about a thing and a narrative or an idea or a message, but the music is there and it's bringing you to a space regardless, and that's like really valuable. um so I think when then you add lyrics to the equation, and it's just that much more complex. There's so many layers to songs. I love songwriting.
Right.
The end.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to go off on Cassandra. Thank you so much. I'd like to wrap it up with some promo.
Okay.
Anybody can stream your music. You're all over your Spotify,
Yeah,
Apple,
it's
iTunes,
easy to find me.
all that jazz, and YouTube, if that's your thing as well.
Yeah.
Um, and people can stay up to date at CassandraJenkins.com. Is it the best place to find tour dates and whatnot, as well as
Yep.
Instagram?
All my tour dates are up there. I am usually trying to share everything on Instagram. I'm always amazed at how much people aren't aware that I have shows coming up. So I the the most that people usually know about my shows is if I'm actually like out socializing and being like, I'm playing in April. Then people come to my show.
Word of mouth.
Otherwise, there's
It's
so
always best.
much information on Instagram that I think you actually do have to go and check an artist's website and buy tickets to the show, because when an artist is able to say to the venue, to their band, to the booking, whoever in their lives, it's like, oh, look, there are tickets still to the show. It's a very securing and enabling thing that you can help, a way that you can support an artist. So like definitely buy tickets to the show if you see that they're up there in your town.
Yeah, and are you planning anytime soon? You going on tour soon?
Yeah, I mean, who knows when this video will be viewed, but I'm
Two
leaving.
about 2 weeks. Yeah, but
Okay. And then like in 20 years, people can know that in a
that
week
too.
from now I'm going to be at South by Southwest. Um, and I will be playing many, many showcases, 3 in 1 day, which is like obviously not a good idea, but I'm gonna try it anyway.
What's the earliest one at?
2 p.m.,
And then what's the next one?
4 p.m., 8 p.m.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So you got a 4 hour gap in between the
yeah,
second and the last.
there's some gaps. Yeah. Um, but then I'm going on tour with Andy Schaaf, who I love, and
Fantastic musician, sure.
then I'm playing at the Big Ears Festival, and then I'm playing a lot of festivals this summer. I don't know which ones are confirmed yet, but I'll be also in Europe and back in the US. I'm sort of ping ponging back and forth. I'm going on tour with my friend Kevin Morby in the
Phenomenal
fall.
musician.
Love
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
guy. Yeah, and so I'm excited. I'm like doing some great opening sets for great artists. Like, I just did one with Courtney Barnett. I did one with the Weather Station. I'm about to go out with Andy and then Kevin, and like it's really fun to be um on these shows because I get to see how these artists that I really love do the thing that they do best. And so I have a lot of opening stuff, but I'm also hoping to book some shows like in on the East Coast and on the West Coast, like around some of the festivals that I'm playing. So um, I'll probably be filling up my calendar a little bit more.
Awesome.
You're
And
in Los Angeles, right?
Orange County. So I
Orange
mean,
County.
it's
Okay.
same. You know,
Okay.
I just
Well,
say it's the same thing. It's not, but it is.
yeah.
It's all Southern
You
California.
have access to like LA shows and might probably go to a lot of shows in LA.
Sure, but this is the issue though. I don't, because of the parking situation. It's atrocious. I have a big car at the moment. That's always an issue.
That is tough.
It is
Yeah.
very tough. But yeah. But
I
anyways,
yeah, I just drove in LA for the first time and it was terrifying. I, I probably won't do that for a little while.
did you get your driver's license in New York?
I did in New York City. I learned how to drive in the city and I love driving here, but it's very different. Like you're never really going that fast. Um and I love driving in New York. I know that's weird, but I like love driving in the
That's very
city.
odd.
It's just where I learned, so I feel like I'm actually like flexing the thing that I studied, and that always feels good to do the thing that you're good at. And then you take me to Los Angeles and I'm like a ghost. I'm so scared.
How is real quick? How is parking in New York when you're looking for a space? Is it take a long, long time, or is it like very
It's
fairly quickly?
horrible.
That's what I thought.
It's painful. Like after 2 hours and all the garages are closed and your eyes feel like they're just bleeding. Like it just and all of your friends are already in bed, so you're like, maybe I'll call a friend on the West Coast. Yeah, it's terrible. It's so bad. You have to wait until you happen to be in the right place at the right time and someone is leaving and you can take their spot. That's kind of like the only way that you do it. I'm driving upstate tonight, so I'm already dreading the parking space that I have to find when I get back.
Oh
into
yeah,
place.
I was gonna say, like, upstate should be easier than the city,
No, but I'm thinking about like, oh
right?
no,
Yeah.
how am I going to do it when I get back? But
As of right now, I guess it would be what 610 there, or
something like that.
7,
Yeah.
710. Are you at a good place right now? Do you have your car in a good spot right
Yeah,
now?
I can see it right out my window. Yeah, it's in a good spot. It's going to be hard to give it up.
How often do you get that spot though, since it's so relatively close?
It's you have to work for it. And my parents my dad will move the car for me a lot of the time because he's really good at it and that's just like a supportive dad thing that he does.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's like it's amazing. And then if I get a good parking spot, like I have never made him prouder than when I get a good parking spot quickly. That is how you impress my dad.
That's
That's
a
the dad
recognition.
challenge.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
want to impress Rich Jenkins, just find a good parking spot and tell him about it.
But it's very, very hard though. Again, I mean, especially in New York, that is just so insanely. I mean, I couldn't.
It's luck, it's strategy, it's perseverance, it is aggression, it is karma, it is everything.
Quite literally karma. Anyways, Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate
You
it.
know, I love a good car pun.
No, yeah.
Right.
End it on a good note. Thank you. I'm gonna stop recording this. I'll talk to you in a minute. All right.
Right.